This is Armoured Warfare, and Armoured Warfare is effectively a World of Tanks clone. You can see just by looking at the garage here, it looks very much like World of Tanks. You've got a very similar system for joining battles, for upgrading your tanks, for unlocking new tanks. The battles themselves are in fact very, very similar to World of Tanks, so you've got the whole thing of capturing the enemy base, destroying the enemy team, etc, etc. So far, so cloning. However, Armoured Warfare, I think, actually could do some serious damage to World of Tanks. And I'm not saying that in the same kind of way that people thought War Thunder might do some damage. No, I think Armoured Warfare has actually got some differences that will make it stand out and will attract some of the player base of World of Tanks to try it out. The problem that War Thunder had was that it's effectively, when I say the same game, that's not really fair, but it's offering the same vehicles. You're being given the chance effectively to play the same vehicles in the same setting, which is fine if you really want to abandon all your progress in one game to start anew in another game, only to play the same stuff that you'd already played, but not many people want to do that, and as such War Thunder didn't really have the impact that I think many thought it did, which is understandable. There needs to be something new, something different, something unique about the game to attract players over from one to the other. Armoured Warfare has got that. It may be a World of Tanks clone, I mean it feels like it mechanically, and it looks like it in its visual presentation, especially things like the garage and the tech tree and the way you unlock stuff. But there are significant changes that I think actually really make it stand out from World of Tanks. One of the most significant and obvious changes is the fact that, well, Armoured Warfare does not use historical tanks. It does not use tanks from the sort of World War II era or prototypes from that time either. It uses modern armour, it uses modern tanks. So we're not talking like T-34s and Panzers, we're talking T-90s and Abrams and Chieftains. You know, these are modern tanks. That's already quite a significant departure from World of Tanks itself. So whilst the mechanics might be pretty much the same and it might run similar and look similar, it actually isn't all that similar because you've got a slightly different experience. You've got something new to draw people in, which is what War Thunder lacked. There's also kind of a significant advantage in using modern armour as well, I feel. The tech tree system in World of Tanks never really made sense to me because you're locked in. You know, if you want to play a Panzer, then you've got to unlock the Panzer by going down the German tech tree. That's sort of okay until you then take your Panzer into a battle and find that you're fighting next to a French tank and an English tank. Being locked into that tech tree and therefore creating, like, I guess, an allegiance with that country, or at least a feeling that that is the country that you are going to be supporting, I suppose. Not supporting, but that, you know, that's the country you've chosen. To then find that you're going into a battle in a game where you're using tanks that are, you know, provided by that country next to tanks that are provided by an enemy country. It might be an arcade game, but if you're like a historical buff, that's probably not going to sit all that well with you. And it always felt a bit weird to me, like it didn't make that much sense that you'd restrict the tech trees that much to one country, and therefore restrict, you know, what tanks you could actually use, because if the country has tanks but not enough to fill a tech tree, they're never going to appear in the game. I don't know, it never seemed to work personally for me, it seemed a bit of a strange choice. Armoured Warfare gets around that because they don't have nationality tech trees, instead they've got arms dealers. In fact, there's almost like a story to Armoured Warfare, which seems a bit strange to say given that it is so much of a World of Tanks clone, but there is. You're not really fighting on behalf of one particular country, you're part of a private military company, so you're a mercenary, effectively, and you are part of a mercenary group and you get sent on missions, and when you get to the mission you find that another mercenary group is trying to fight you off. The fact that you're all in tanks is kind of an incidental detail, but it does provide not believable backing for the game, but at least makes slightly more sense than Panzers going to war against other Panzers with the help of the French and the British and the Russians. It still doesn't make any sense, but it kind of sits a little bit better. It's a slightly more believable, unbelievable story, if that makes any sense. By using the arms dealers instead of national tech trees, they also have scope to really use vehicles from pretty much any country as well. As I said, in World of Tanks, if there's a country that only has a few tanks, but they could have been great tanks, they're not going to appear in the game because there's not enough to fill out a tech tree. And without enough to fill out a tech tree, they're just not going to be there. That's how the game works. With Armoured Warfare, you don't have national ties to any particular tech tree. You don't have to go down one tech tree to use English tanks and another to use American. Instead, you've got these different arms dealers. So the distribution of armour actually works out a bit better. You know, you can pick and choose a bit more. You still have the same unlock system whereby you use one tank and then once you've got experience and money you can unlock the next tank, but it's not restricted to nationality. It's not restricted on a country basis. It's restricted just down to what the arms dealer has, which I guess works as well as any other system, and in fact slightly better in terms of the context of modern armour, because obviously the US is not going to be supplying you with their tanks, the UK is not going to give you a chieftain, you're not just going to find a T90 up for sale. However, an arms dealer, I suppose, could find those somewhere if they really needed to. As I say, it's not the most believable of settings, but it still makes slightly more sense if you really care about that kind of thing than going to war against the Germans as the Germans with the help of the English and the French, and you're also fighting the Russians and the English and the French, if you see what I mean. Like I say, a slightly more believable, unbelievable story. There's also the fact that it's in a different engine as well. Now, that obviously does make sense because it's a different company. In fact, it's Obsidian Entertainment who's making Armoured Warfare. They're more known for their RPGs, so it's kind of interesting they decided to go for this. But the game is being produced in CryEngine 3. Now, CryEngine 3 is obviously a modern engine, and it already looks quite a bit better than World of Tanks. We're obviously only in early access, alpha and then beta, for Armoured Warfare, but it already looks pretty good. Obviously, things will improve as the game comes along and development happens, so even though it looks good now, it will look better in the future and hopefully become more optimized, because at the moment it's not optimized that well. But CryEngine is a lot more upgradable, it's a lot more updatable than Wargaming's Big World engine. Whether that'll make much of a difference in the long run, I don't know, because World of Tanks has obviously got a massive player base and a very dedicated player base at that. But Armoured Warfare, I think, has got some things which will draw people away. It's got a slightly different way of approaching crew as well, so your kind of crew commander, as it were, has more abilities than the rest of your crew. It's almost got RPG-like elements, Armoured Warfare, which makes sense given it's Obsidian Entertainment, who are primarily known for RPGs, but it adds an extra element to the game. It's almost like the commander of your tank is effectively your character, and you can develop that character and you can respec that character and so on and so forth. All the different crew members have got different voices as well. Instead of there being one voice per vehicle, each crew member has got their own voice, so you'll have the gunner and the driver and so on talking to each other. It's just little touches like that. There seems to be a lot of attention to detail in Armoured Warfare so far. It's looking pretty promising. I mean, playing it is like playing World of Tanks, but it's like a faster, sleeker World of Tanks. Overall, I think Armoured Warfare has got a good chance of taking away a significant chunk of World of Tanks player base. It's got newer vehicles, it's got different settings, it's got a slightly different progression system, it's got a much more detailed and developed crew system as well. Armoured Warfare could be the thing that not kills World of Tanks, but definitely damages it. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens as the development of this game goes on. Because right now, I think we need competition for things like World of Tanks. I don't think it's very good to have a single company that's got the monopoly on a certain type of game. I think we need to see competition. We need to see them being scared into doing something different, something new. And Armoured Warfare could be the thing that really pushes World of Tanks to the edge. Let me know if you agree in the comments, let me know if you've been playing Armoured Warfare and if you're enjoying it, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Toodaloo.